Hello and welcome back to another video on high altitude investing. In today's video, we are going to be talking about Theta and how I personally think it could hit $260 by 2029. So let's get straight into this. So first, we're going to be looking at Theta zoomed out here on the monthly candlesticks, and we're going to talk about the big picture target here and my moonshot target of $260, but we're also going to talk about some other targets and the short term in this video as well, so make sure you stay clear till the very end. So first, we are starting off here in the bigger time frame, and as you can see, I do have Theta compared to Bitcoin. Now, the reason I want to show you guys this fractal is just how similar the market structure is on Theta right now to Bitcoin back in the day when Bitcoin ran all the way to $20,000 per coin. Now, obviously, I'm not calling for $20,000 per Theta, but if you measure the Fibonacci extensions and you expect a similar move coming on this coin, it does show that Theta could hit as high as $260 by 2029. So that's not going to happen overnight. If we do get a run like this, it's going to take some time to get there. We'll have to be patient and we'll have to wait for price to get that high. With that being said, it will still happen pretty fast considering the fact that 2029 is only 4 years away since we're in 2025 currently. Now, the parabolic run that I'm expecting for this coin will be very vertical. Zoomed out like this, it looks like it's going to take a long time before it starts to run. But actually, if you zoom in on the Bitcoin chart, you can see the Bitcoin was continually increasing throughout this entire period of time. Theta will do the same thing as well once we start to bottom out based on this double bottom pattern that we're currently forming. So once we start the uptrend, it will start trending up very quickly and it will continue to make higher highs and higher lows, and it will be profitable throughout that entire period. Obviously, once we break above the old all-time high, then price will start to go vertical in a way that's a lot faster than it will before then. But even still, before we break the old all-time high, we're still going to see higher highs and higher lows and a very profitable move here for Theta. Now, this isn't the only view that I see for this coin. There's also an alternative, which is a lower target, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But I wanted to present this one first, that this is my primary view for this coin, and this is what I expect to happen for this coin. But with that being said, I do have another view for Theta, a little bit of a lower target, a little less crazy, and a little bit more conservative. So let's go ahead and talk about that. Then we'll talk about the short term coming for this coin. But before we do, I just really want to bring home this idea that Theta really could hit $260 by 2029. The setup is perfect. It looks exactly like Bitcoin before Bitcoin ran all the way to the 16,618 after an ABC correction. The volume is very similar. The structure is the same. And I really see this happening for Theta. So let's talk a little bit about the alternative. This is Theta compared to Ethereum. Now, this view would not be quite as parabolic and quite as profitable as our previous fractal, but it'd still be super profitable for Theta. So we have Ethereum over here on the right, and this time we're measuring from the bottom to the top with the Fib extension tool on Ethereum instead of Bitcoin with a similar fractal, a similar ABC correction, but this time Ethereum only ran up to just under the 3618 level. And that level for Ethereum was around $4,800 per coin. So if Theta was to do a similar move as Ethereum instead of as Bitcoin, then we'd see Theta run all the way up to around $53 per coin, which is extremely profitable, but it's not $260 and it's not quite as high as the previous fractal that we were looking at. Now, the thing with this fractal is it would happen a lot faster. So this one could happen within the next year or two, whereas the other fractal is showing Theta running up to $260 by 2029. So that one would take longer, but it would take us higher, and this one would be faster, but it wouldn't take us quite as high as the previous fractal. Now, both I think are pretty likely for happening. I'm leaning more towards the longer cycle running all the way till 2029 with a $260 Theta based on the conditions of crypto right now, with mass adoption starting to take place and a lot of big institutions taking it seriously. That is the kind of market conditions that would create more of a longer sustained growth rather than just a quick parabolic run and a bear market like we saw in 2020 2021, and 2022. Now, with that being said, if we do get the Ethereum fractal, it's still possible for us to see another run. I mean, Ethereum is starting to recover as we speak, and Ethereum could break out to a new all-time high. So even if Theta does the Ethereum fractal instead, all that it means is that we'd have a bear market around the 3618 level before we reaccumulate and potentially go even higher for this coin over the long term. So these are the two main scenarios that I'm seeing for Theta in the bigger picture. Obviously, the best thing to do is to take profits as you're breaking out to a new all-time high. Not all of it, just take a little off the table and make sure you keep some in the market in case price goes all the way to $260 by 2029. But also, if we start to look like we're rejecting around the 3618 Fibonacci extension, you could take even more profits so you can buy the dip in preparation for a reaccumulation and potentially even more upside over the long term for this coin. So either way, you're going to make a lot of money as long as you lock in some of those gains and as long as you keep some money in the market over the long term, because either way, over the long term, I'm expecting a lot of bullishness for Theta. Either scenario, whether we go all the way to $260 by 2029 in more of a sustained run, or whether we go really parabolic and then have a bear market more like Ethereum over here and then reaccumulate and potentially break out for a new all-time high. Either way, over the long term, I'm expecting upside for this coin. So that's the bigger picture for Theta. Now let's go ahead and talk about the smaller time frames and what could be happening on these smaller time frames, because there is a lot of profit potential that I am seeing on these smaller time frames. So we're going to start off here on the 3-hour time frame. And the first thing I want to show you here on the 3-hour time frame is bullish divergence. So we have a lower low on price and we have a higher low on the MACD. So that's bullish divergence here on the 3-hour for Theta. So this suggests that we could have a bottom in here at around 80 cents, and we could be starting to turn around for more upside on the 3-hour time frame. That's a really good thing to see the bullish divergence here on the 3-hour, and it's a really strong buy signal for this coin. So definitely pay attention to that bullish divergence here on the 3-hour with the MACD. That's a really good sign. The other thing that I'm seeing here with Theta is a bullish Elliott wave structure. So we have wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, and wave 4, and we could be ready for a fifth wave here on the 3-hour time frame as well, which is also very bullish for this coin. And if we zoom out just a little bit to the daily time frame, we also see an inverse head and shoulders pattern. So you can see here we have a left shoulder here, a head right here, and a right shoulder forming currently. So that's a very bullish pattern, very high probability, and one you definitely want to pay attention to, because once you break above the neckline, you do have a minimum target of the head. So you measure the length of the head and you put it on top of that neckline, and that's your minimum target for that pattern. So if we break above this neckline here at around $1.04, our minimum target based on that pattern is $1.47. Now, a lot of times it will go above that minimum target, but you do at least reach that minimum target most of the time. So that's the daily and the 3-hour. Now let's talk a little bit about the 4-day time frame, because we also see a nice ABC correction here on the 4-day time frame, which is a very strong buy signal. A lot of whales see this and they're going, nice. This thing has a perfect ABC correction. We're oversold on the MACD and we're right on major support. That's a lot of good reasons to be buying Theta at these levels based on the ABC, the oversold conditions, and the major support levels that we are currently testing. And here's the major support level right here, as you can see that we are testing for Theta. So based on this ABC correction, we are ready for a wave 3 in the bigger picture. So this would be wave 1, wave 2, and we'd be ready for wave 3 here zoomed out on the 4-day time frame, which would be very parabolic and very bullish in coming months for this coin. So now let's zoom out to the weekly time frame here and take a look at what's happening on the weekly time frame. So on the weekly, we also have a very big ABC correction, wave A, wave B, and wave C. So this is what I was showing you at the very start of this video when I was comparing Bitcoin to Theta and showing you how Bitcoin had one of these ABC corrections before before it took off to a new all-time high in the bigger picture, and how Theta also has one of these ABC corrections currently. And by the way, Ethereum also had one of those ABC corrections before it ran up to just below the 3618 Fibonacci that we were just looking at on its comparison. So based on this ABC correction here on the weekly time frame, this does show a lot of bullishness coming in the market. A lot of people are going to be seeing this ABC correction. A lot of big players and whales are going to see this, and they're going to get very excited because they know what happens after these ABC corrections form, which is a very parabolic run. I just showed you two examples of Ethereum and Bitcoin, how they both ran very parabolic after forming these ABC corrections. And by the way, we have seen these ABC corrections over and over again in the markets. Even Bitcoin in 2018 did the exact same pattern. Had a little bit of a bigger double bottom than what we see here with Theta, but it's still the same thing. Even the COVID drop right here on Bitcoin in 2020 is very similar to the panic that we just saw recently for Theta. And of course, here's the ABC correction that we were looking at the start of this video on Bitcoin back in 2015, when Bitcoin formed one of these ABC corrections before running all the way to $20,000 per coin. And here is the same ABC correction on Ethereum that took Ethereum all the way to just below the 3618 Fibonacci extension, around $4,700 per Ethereum. So you can see how these ABC corrections, when you see them in the market, it's definitely time to pay attention, especially in the bigger picture, and especially when you see a lot of volume like we see over here with Theta. Definitely pay attention because the fruition of these ABC corrections is very, very profitable. So that's my view on Theta. I personally think we could hit $260 by 2029. I of course have some alternatives, like if it does the Ethereum fractal instead and only runs to around $53, that could also happen. But either way, I'm expecting bullishness over the long term, whether we follow the Ethereum fractal and run super vertical, super fast, and then have a bear market, or whether we follow the Bitcoin fractal and run all the way to $260 by 2029 without any big bear markets. Either way, I'm expecting upside over the long term for this coin. Yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Make sure that you apply for the one-on-one coaching, link in the description box below. Maybe you guys are having a hard time predicting these markets or finding good setups in the markets, or buying highs, selling lows, and you just feel frustrated that you can't get it right. That's why I made the one-on-one coaching, to help you guys start making money in these markets easily and consistently. It's a 12-week program where I personally coach you on how to become a professional in these markets, all of the tools that you need, and how to use them in a simple, easy, and powerful way. So make sure that you guys apply for that and transform your trading and your investing. So yeah, that's my update on Theta. I look forward to seeing you guys in future videos. And as always, stay profitable out there.